basically you do the split that you prefer is the chest and back day 1, shoulders and arms day 2, and then legs day 3, and then you'll repeat that without a rest day yet, right? So you won't necessarily take a rest day. You'll go right into the second rotation where instead of legs at the end, you'll do some cardio.
Yeah.
Like so what I'm interested, and then you'll have your day off after that. What I'm interested in, and I've always been curious about this with other high performing lifters, we'll call it, the second upper body day, do you find that gives you any issues at all? Meaning because you trained upper body the day before, and even though you're biased to different muscle groups, we could say, there's overlap, of course. So I'm always curious how you've experienced that, and if you've ever run into any, just days where you're like, man, I'm really toast, but I'm going to push through it kind of thing.
Oh, you're always toast.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
But do you mean like, say I've done chest and back, by the time I'm doing chest and back again, or do you mean the following day?
I mean the following day having to do shoulders and arms when you basically hit those muscle groups, just not directly, right?
Never in my arms. I'll never feel grief that way. Shoulders, they might be a little sore, but once you start moving them, you're fine.
Yeah, because I've always been more cautious of that, maybe because of my history, but where I'll either slide a leg day between the 2 upper days. Then you run into the problem if you are doing 6 in a row, like you mentioned, where now you're doing arms before chest and back, which is maybe not the best, right?
That's right.
Because sometimes people are asking these questions where should it be push legs and then pull, or push pull then legs, or legs push and then meanwhile it's more so, it's very individual specific, like you mentioned, where you have no grief in your arms, but if someone else is getting sore in their arms after chest and back, could be an execution thing, it could be an experience thing, maybe you're not targeting the right muscles yet.
It could be a novice thing. When I do back, when I started in the gym, my forearms would be in agony. There was no way I'd be doing arms straight away, but you've got to gradually just push through it, gently push. After a while, after a few months, then you don't notice it anymore.
Okay. Oh, good. That's some good insight right there. And as far as training body parts 2 times per week, aside from the legs, what is the reasoning for you personally behind that versus the traditional, I'm going to hit 1 body part per week?
Well, it used to be 1 body part a week, but that was when I kind of started taking it seriously, and then quickly moved to 4 days and then 3 days. So primarily because I just listened to what other guys that I wanted to look like would do. So Frank Zane is a massive influence on my training and diet. So he would do a similar split, and I thought, well, if he's doing it and he looks like that, then I'm not going to try and reinvent the wheel.
Sure. You have his books?
Yeah.
Nice. Is that the one where he has the diaries where he's got the whole list of all the routines he's ever gone through kind of thing? Or because I know he's a few books.
There's a few, yeah. I had 2 borrowed. I lent one and never got it back. The other one is more kind of general.
Okay. And that was the routine, specifically the chest. I think even Arnold was doing a routine similar to that back in the 70s, right? Like that was kind of the golden era routine, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. And it makes sense if you're supersetting chest and back, you can get both done in a reasonable time frame, and even though it's really intense and almost a cardio workout, you're still, while your back's resting, you can get the most out of your chest and vice versa.
For sure. When you're in a period where you're in a bit of a surplus and you're growing, do you still superset? Do you utilize supersets, or is that strictly for fat loss?
Just fat loss.
Okay.
Yeah. Cool. It's hard to keep up for a long period of time.
So you kind of pull those out when you need it, basically, those techniques.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I need it a lot.
Yeah. Have you ever experienced or experimented with the 2 times per day training like Joel?
I don't have the time. No. When you're working full time and whatnot, it's, if you did nothing outside of the gym and work, then sure. But yeah,
that's you either have to be working in a gym, which is like a lot of PTs do that, and maybe not a physical job unless you're on a boatload of gear, which can help you recover. Because I know some of these golden era bodybuilders like Sergio Oliva, and back in the 60s and 70s, some of them had physical manual labor jobs, and they were training like 2 times a day. And who's surviving that naturally and with a full-time job, and if your job is physical? So keep in mind, folks, when we're speaking, this is very context specific, right? Like Joel, actually, I don't know what Joel, I never got to ask him. That's a great question when I have him back on for a chat, but he must work in a gym, I would assume, right?
He used to.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that would make sense then.
Yeah.
So back to you, Brock. Let's discuss, and I know you mentioned this at the beginning, as far as the enjoyment factor. Do you have like favorite body part to train, like that you enjoy training?
Yeah, chest and back. Yeah,
How come?
that's you just feel so good after it.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it's like to pretend. It's nice to pretend that that's how you look
right.
full
Before
time.
the pump goes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Make the most of it.
for sure. Have you ever experimented with high intensity training approach, just one set to failure, maybe a
Mm,
few warm-ups, but not close to failure, like the warm-ups are not close to failure, and limited training frequency? So we'll say
mm,
maybe 3 days per week training, 3, 4 days
mm.
per week. Have you ever experimented with that versus the more volume side of things that you're on now?
Really briefly, a long time ago, would have been 5 years ago, because it's a fascinating concept. It's intriguing. And then, especially when you've got Mike Mentor and Dorian Yates as the biggest advocates, you kind of think, well, how could it not work? But it just seems counterintuitive in a way, for me anyway. You can't argue that it worked for them. Whether you can do it naturally or not, I'm not sure, but I probably didn't get as much out as I thought I would. Having said that, I didn't try it long enough. And you also need to rely on having, correct me if I'm wrong, but you need to rely on having a training partner there quite often to really get the most out of that working set and help spot, etc. So yeah, I
think
just feel like I'm getting more out of higher volume.
Question for you, training wise, to go back to the volume thing for a second. So let's take a typical chest and back workout specific to muscle growth. We'll stick to that for a second here. The attempt at growing bigger muscles. What might that look like? Can you give a sample of how that might look? How long it would take you in the gym to complete on average?
Yeah, the training won't, for me anyway, won't change that much whether I'm trying to put on muscle or burn fat. The only difference will be the rest,
The supersets.
the supersets, the diet and cardio factors. So a typical back workout, for example, would be I've changed it once and regretted it. So I never change back. I'll do 3 pull down exercises, about 3 to 4 sets of each. That includes working sets. And then, warm up sets, and then 3 rows. Vary the grip and try and get a good mix of cable, machine, free weight for each.
And that is only on one day. So you will repeat something similar to that on the second rotation.
Yeah.
Okay. So you mentioned including warm-ups. Now these warm-up sets, this is an interesting question to me. These warm-up sets, are they anywhere near what you might consider failure, or the attempt towards failure is probably more accurate for most people, right?
Let's say it started with pull downs, right? And I'd do my first set, I might do 12 to 15 reps. I could probably get 30 out.
Okay.
And then the second warm-up set I'd increase the weight and might get 12 out, but I could probably do 15.
Okay, so getting closer.
Getting closer. And then the last 2 are much more balls to the wall.
Okay. So those are the ones you're not holding back, basically.
Yeah.
Whatever you got, you'll give it.
Yeah.
Okay. But you're not, or I don't want to say it like this. Are you overly, this is a harsh word, but it's fair in our circle, right? Obsessed with having to hit failure? Like if you're like, oh man, I don't know, I could have got maybe 2 more. Does that bother you in the gym, given all the volume you're doing? Because I know some people are obsessed. They make it their mission to hit failure. And if they don't, their whole day's ruined. So I'm curious your thought process behind that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, every working set, I'll aim to not be able to do another one. Is my day going to be ruined? No.
Okay, good.
Okay.
That's good. I'm
Bigger
happy
things
for
to worry
you.
about.
I'm happy for you, man. That's great to hear. The next thing I wanted to ask you, as far as the chest part of it, is it similar as far as the amount of exercises and the way you approach the sets?
Yeah, so this for chest, I just copy whatever Joel does, and he does it for a good reason, right?
Yeah, for sure.
What do I do for those pecs? I will just do 1 flat, 1 incline, a decline, and then fly for 4 exercises.
Okay, and you'll do that typically after the back, or one day is it you'll prioritize chest and then the next day you'll start with back? Or
I usually do it after back, just because back's such a big muscle group.
Sure. So Joel's someone who trains 6 to 7 days per week. And now he mentioned this to me, that you actually don't do that for the most part. How do you train? What's your training frequency like? Let's start there. How many times a week are you in the gym usually?
No, I would say that typically I'd be in there 6 days a week. Yeah, if I've done a cut for months and months and I've been in there 6, 7 days a week, plus doing